Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Michelle, and I've been volunteering with the Migrant Writers of Singapore since 2017. So I've helped out to organize the inaugural Migrant Literature Festival in 2019, and also helped out with events like One Bag, One Book. Okay, so I'll be your host for the next 2 segments. Our next segment is Laughter is Medicine, where we'll have 5 poets. In this poetry recital section, poets will use humor to exemplify the flexibility of the human mind in seeing the world from various perspectives. This is in fact exercising autonomy and control over reality. To quote Plato, reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind. Humor is also universal, and it bridges differences. As the late stand-up comedian George Carlin said, everyone smiles in the same language. So conversations around mental health tend to focus on the negatives and difficulty. But how can we actually instead look towards humor to strengthen our resilience? So let me first introduce our very first speaker, Stephanie Dogfoot. Okay. Stephanie Dogfoot is a poet, comedian, and event producer who has won national poetry slams in Singapore and the UK. She has been described as a right-on wordsmith and master of comic poignancy. She has run workshops on poetry and stand-up comedy with the Mental Health Awareness and Wellbeing Festival, the National Library, LaSalle College of the Arts, and many others. She currently runs a poetry night called Spoke and Bird. Stephanie will first introduce the workshop that she held in August 2022 this year, as some of the presenters were part of the workshop. Let us now have Stephanie Dogfoot.
All right. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. All right. Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. My presentation will probably be a bit shorter than the allotted time. I've never really done a condensed version of a workshop before, but the actual workshop was around, I think, about 2 to 3 hours long. So obviously we don't have enough time for that. So I'll do my best in explaining to you what I talked about, what we learned, what we did, and yeah, hopefully it will be almost like taking a workshop without having to sit through the whole workshop. And hopefully you'll all get everything that we learned. Are there any, were there any participants in the audience who took the workshop? Any of them? 1 person, 2. Okay, nice. So you all can correct me if I get anything wrong. So my background is I'm a spoken word poet, as well as I've been writing poetry since about 2007, been performing since about 2008. And what really kept me in poetry and what kept me going in poetry was realizing that I could be on stage and actually be funny. I was very, very shy as a child. I still am very introverted. I still find it hard to make friends. But I found that if I was standing on stage with a microphone, I became a different person, and I sort of had permission to be this whole other person and had the permission to say anything on my mind. And I suddenly was able to appeal to people, to connect with people in entirely new ways. And I'll never forget the first time I performed on stage and people laughed at the jokes I was making in poetry for the very first time, and it was a certain kind of power. And I just got hooked on realizing I could write about the things that were going on in my life, and I was able to entertain people. I was able to entertain, and not just being able to make people laugh, but also being able to make people understand what I was going through, and even more surprisingly, having people come up to me and say, oh, I've been through the exact same thing. So I think what keeps me going as a poet and what's kept me writing and performing for all these years is really creating connections and creating community with people, especially people I've never met and people I sometimes think I have nothing in common with, and realizing that we're all much more similar than we think. And so for me, that's one of the beauties of writing, of art, of performing, and also of using humor. And I just want to emphasize also, when I talk about, I think, using humor in writing, I don't mean necessary humor to sort of like laugh off our problems. I think that's very important. It's not really to make our problems seem smaller necessarily, and it's not really to, not necessarily always as a coping mechanism, because I think there's a very big limit to how much you can use humor to try and cope with your problems. But I think what you can do, what for me is very powerful to use humor for, is to sort of talk about my own issues in a way that gives me a bit of distance from them, and also helps me to explain them to people, and also really a way to take myself a bit less seriously. Like, yes, I have these problems. We all have a lot of different problems. Some people's problems are maybe more systemic than others. Some people's problems are more deep-seated than others. And I'm not saying we should all use humor to again, make our problems seem smaller or make them more palatable to people. I'm saying we can use our humor to sort of like make it more relatable to different people, and hopefully build empathy among people around us who maybe see the art we create. And for myself, it's a good way, using humor in my work is a good way to keep myself humble, and a good way to make myself not really to remember that I'm not necessarily the center of the universe all the time, that sometimes someone else is looking at me and looking at the way that I see the world, it can be quite funny. Just to give an example, someone, I think a friend of mine posted on Facebook recently of like, does anyone else lie awake at night thinking about all the terrible things, all the things that they've said that day, and replay them in their head, and just cringe at everything that they've said that day? And I mean, I know I've done that myself many times. And then I thought about it, and so I replied to them. I was like, yes, I do it. But what makes it easier for me is if I see my life as like a comedy movie, and then suddenly all the embarrassing things I said don't seem quite so bad. Because it helps me to not really think of myself as like this super important person that I need to like take seriously all the time. Okay, so I'll go a bit more into the workshop and what I talked about. So first, I'll just go into the different activities that we did, and these are some of the bigger activities. So the first thing we did was this thing called the drawing game. It's also called Exquisite Corpse. It's actually a game that I used to play with my roommates in university. Sometimes if we were just like sitting around the table at dinner, if we were a bit bored. And to me, it's like the one game that like can turn a room full of strangers into friends. And it's very, very simple. If we had a bit more time, I'd love to do it with you all. But essentially, it's just, we just got people to write a sentence, and the next person just like drew out that sentence, and you folded it down so that the next person had no idea what the picture was supposed to represent. They just like wrote a sentence. And essentially, it was just like people interpreting each other's pictures and each other's lines. And then you open up the paper when the whole paper's done, and we just see what's come out of that. And usually it was something completely unexpected and very, very funny. And the purpose of that, besides just being a really, really fun game, was to realize that how a lot of humor comes from surprise, and how a lot of humor comes from the unexpected and things which we don't really think are going to happen. And so the next is, I got people to watch 2 stand-up comedy videos. One was by this local comedian, Rishi Budrani, and a bit about my own background in stand-up comedy, which is when I came back to Singapore after studying overseas, I just really wanted more stages to perform on. So I got into the local comedy open mic scene, and Singapore has a very, very great history and amazing community of stand-up comedians, which I encourage all of you to check out. For myself, as someone coming from the poetry kind of scene, this community felt very, very different in that it really was people who didn't really take their art, they took the art very, very seriously, in the sense of like, they knew they had to work at it, they knew they had to keep improving, but at the same time, there were people who maybe didn't take themselves as seriously as poets sometimes, in that they were able to laugh about the things that happened in their life. They were able to sort of make jokes about some like very serious things, and everything that happened to them could be turned into a joke potentially, which to me was a completely new and like amazing thing to learn. So we saw this one comedian called Rishi Pudrani, who talked about an experience of racism that he encountered in a taxi, which to me it was a very good example because he was able to really like make a very good joke out of it, and also is able to be very relatable to like a lot of Singaporeans and also like migrants, and at the same time really make a good point about racism. And the other person I showed was this Australian comedian called Demi Lardner, who really just does really weird stuff. Like most of their act just consisted of them just like crawling into the audience to retrieve a box, and again, it was just to show that humor can really come in like the strangest of places. And then after that, watching funny spoken word, we saw some funny spoken word, some sort of like humorous spoken word, to show that how, again, you could use poetry to make points and express them with humor. Then we did a writing exercise in which I got people to, which I've actually run here before, got people to list out a list of things that they didn't like, and essentially write a poem about one of those things, because we found it's actually a lot easier to find humor sometimes in negative things than in positive things. Okay, so I think I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go very quickly to the last slide. So just these 5 points are some of the takeaways I wanted people to think about, and I want you all to think about before we leave. So in humor, writing can come from surprise, and also in specificity. It can also come from vulnerability. That's something I learned in both poetry and also stand-up. Basically, the more of you, the more honest you are, in a way, the easier it is. And the easier it is to kind of make people laugh. Can also come from anger, negative experiences. It can also help us communicate the things we feel very strongly about. It gives us new ways to write, and also, most importantly, as I mentioned, helps us to connect with other people, because by laughing we can all sort of like build a kind of community together, even if just for a few moments. And I think the last thing I wanted to say was that humor is a very powerful way to, in a way, speak truth to power and to sort of reclaim power for ourselves, especially when we're feeling very helpless and powerless. And so that is the end of my talk, I think. Thank you all so much.
Okay, so next up we have Lorelyn de la Cruz, who is a self-published bicolana author of Twin Delights and Haikuna Matata, a haiku collection which is sold outside. So you can hop over to the book fair outside of this room to purchase her copy. Her poetry has been featured and published in anthologies and journals such as the Haiku Foundation, Tsuridoro, and Lorelyn Poetry Journal. So let us welcome Lorelyn on stage.
Good afternoon. Okay, never mind. Thank you. I'm Lorelyn, and this poem is dedicated to all the single warriors in here and out there in the world. This is also dedicated to all our oppressors who have been haunting us with their obsession over our civil status. Okay. The one. So, you know I'm single. You would know I'm single when friends, countrymen, and even the Romans ask, when are you getting married? Sorry, I can't hear you with your mask. Truth is, I'm just waiting for the one who can explain to me, if marriage is so great and love is true, then why did you get out? Was it painful than your gout? So yes, I'm single. But you would know I'm single when I make dinner reservations for one. But eating buffet for two is a lot more fun. Well, I'm on a diet. It's called IF, intermittent fasting. Because life may be hard, but it's too beautiful to be wasting. Time, joy, and big dreams. Don't forget the chocolate, wine, and ice cream. Thank God I'm single. And you'd know I'm single when I go out to mingle, what some may consider as dating, with guys and their girlfriends. Voila! It's perfect, third wheeling. The wheel of fortune spinning depends on how I'm richly fed. Lest they want their photos looking like royalty, but off with their heads. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Jedidiah Huang, who is a Singaporean spoken word poet. His attempts at processing his trauma have led him to be published in 3 anthologies, becoming a Yoda spoken word runner-up in 2018, and he won the Gold Sintap Creative Writing Competition in 2019 and was a finalist in the National Poetry Competition in 2020. He's obsessed with stories and all the best ways to tell them. Unfortunately, he's resting at home today due to a COVID close contact, so he'll be joining us via a pre-recorded video. Let us hear from Jedidiah.
My tongue is a paikia, born into a gang, entered primary school and forgot how to live. My tongue is a wok of fried rice. My father always say, the secret to the best fried rice is take your family's leftovers, throw it into a giant wok, toss it for 3 minutes with a lot of oil. By this time, you'll be so hungry, anything would taste good. My tongue is a hungry pubescent boy. My tongue is what happens when you toss RGS educated Priscilla and Chinese high educated Kyokwa for 3 minutes with a lot of oil. I grew up with my mother's metered drumbeat accent and my father's fluttered melody in dialect. I learned language the same way my father learned the only piano song he knows. With no formal musical education, he relied on the pure memory of living room finger banter. When I hear him play, I hear his favorite clumsy vintage film. Now, I'm a cocktail of confused accents. My English is clean and clinical, like my mother's voice when she tells me to tell my father to tell me to tell her whether he wants to come home for dinner or ever at all. My father tongue is equal parts memory and instinct, often without understanding. A scar on my tongue, like the night I huddled beside my siblings, or the echoes through the walls, taught us nursery rhymes we didn't understand. 霸道，你就是霸道，要我怎么办? So now, my tongue is a misplaced altar of laws and laws. 2 wrapped kebabs with my JC classmates, my Merdeka accent smelled like cigarette smoke and casual alcoholism to them. I am the horror story the school parents gossip about. I became my army friend's token JC friend, the go-to essay writer, the one who's from JC so you don't know one lah. My tongue don't know one lah. My tongue is still trying to find a shoebox to fit in. My tongue is still applying for a diploma in coding and certs in public speaking, trying to become more employable. At this point, my tongue is so hungry for a label. Millennial seems good enough for me. And what could be more millennial than a spoken word poem that uses the words pubescent and wraps kebabs? Some days, my tongue feels like salted egg sauce trying to fit into everything. And some days, my tongue feels like mala truffle fries, imported from all over the world, just trying to find a home. Hi everyone, I'm Jedidiah Huang. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to share my poetry with y'all, and I wish I could be there with y'all. Unfortunately, COVID's gonna do what COVID's gonna do. But one good thing about this is that we get wardrobe change. So I have one more song for all of you. is the world is going to end, and I have a crush on you. Last year, sea levels rose by 3.6 millimeters. What I'm trying to say is this year, we are already 3.6 millimeters closer to drowning. But fuck that, I already started using a life jacket as a blanket. Replaced my spectacles with goggles. Started learning how to translate my own bubbles, because you always said you were a visual person, and I always said my visuals were a misdirection. Don't trust the baby face or the extra muffin baggage with you. I can never feel it. I'm just always gasping. My lips are a smoke signal from a guppy. Thought he knew how to swim. Thought he knew water till he dipped his freshwater tail into this salty new world and realized, oh, this is water. Whereas the earth is 71% ocean. So if you close your eyes, you can actually hear the air conditioner working 0.2 degrees harder than yesterday. Wait, no, that's just my heart being a little bit faster, because today you lean in a little bit closer, and tonight I'll be sleeping a little bit later. My eyes are a little bit more self-conscious between you, me, words, bubbles of fucking apocalypse. It's all propaganda, trust me. I'm trying to tell you, the end of the world is here. The polar bears are naked. I'm dancing on an ice cube. Your eyes are inevitable. My smirk is an exit sign. I wave hi to your boyfriend. Did you hear me? The end of the world is here. I am crushed. 17 kilometers underwater, my bubbles still reach for the surface. And maybe next year, end of the world, finally. Thank you so much. I've been Jedidiah. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Migrant Writer of Singapore. And I hope to see you all again in person soon. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you, Jedidiah, for your very animated and engaging poetry, as well as dark humor with a literally dark shirt. Okay, so next up we have Rema. Rema loves to read books and found writing as a hobby when she joined the Daily Life in COVID-19 Facebook group. Her poem, titled The Beauty Within, was included in the Alienation project by the Substation. Other poems have been included in various anthologies and journals. In May 2022, her short story, Nothing Lasts, won first place in a writing competition. Her favorite quote is, "Be a better version of yourself every day." So let us invite Rema.
You should have seen the eyes of my parents when I told them I'm getting married. It popped out bigger than SpongeBob's eyes. In the day my in-laws came to shake my hand, my father is like Jack in a box. My mom is like a raging bull. I can almost hear her heart like those of a giant fish. Thump, thump, thump. Fee-foo, fee-foo. They tried to send me away, but lo and behold, the lightning-like husband of mine came knocking the door. Bam, bam, bam. I felt like he was Romeo and I was Juliet. Well, who just entered puberty stage though. As they say, curiosity kills the cat. Well, it did. In my feast for lust, I become full. I didn't see sin. I just saw rainbow. I heard music. I saw colors. It was then I realized I was not colorblind. I listened to my heart even though my head cannot comprehend. every time I was in his presence, our love grew and grew and grew. Same goes with the balloon-like tummy that can be burst any soon. And oh, pop goes my baby. Everything is easy peasy. I was smiling even though my babies are crying. Even when I feel so sleepy while changing their nappy, I was happy. Few years passed on, my eyes catch on like marriage, become mother and father. We allowed sin to creep into our lives. I came like a wrecking ball. I never hit so hard in love. All I wanted was to break your balls. Well, sorry. All you ever did was wreck me. You wrecked me. You wrecked me. Things didn't go well, but I have good lessons and good experiences for life. So don't be afraid to go by what you feel. Our decisions may be good or bad, but never wrong. I was happy I was reconciled with my parents, and my father openly urged me to find a companion. And I was like, you were so against last time. Why are you so against this time? I stopped him by saying, I do continue to hold on to hope that love exists, that love will find me one day.
Thank you, Rema, for a very interesting poetry. Next up, we have Abu Ubaidah bin Eliase. He's a poet who likes to see the brighter side of things. He writes about social issues that he feels strongly about and often talks about his experiences living with chronic illness. Let's now have Abu.
Hello? Oh dear, can I be heard? Wait, do I have to wait for that mic? Okay, I'm not sure what to do. Oh no. Do I start? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Abu. I'll stand near the podium because I'm actually very scared, so this gives me a bit more comfort. Actually, I've been writing poetry for a while, but most of my poems are quite serious. So I attended Steph's workshop, and I'm trying to take things a bit more lightly, or trying to write a bit more funny things, but I'm doing my best. So I'll read a few short poems for you. My first poem is, I hate having the flu. There is nothing I hate more than having the flu. 2 weeks ago, my voice started to break and deepen. My throat felt like sandpaper, and oh boy, I knew. This was not another puberty, it was the goddamn flu. The phlegm in my throat felt like Putin invading Ukraine. And my body felt chills enduring all the pain. I prayed and prayed for all of it to go away. My hoarse voice produced sound for a few seconds before I coughed, and the drummers in my head started going insane. The flu is bad. I hate it so much. I hate it even more than laxatives and Donald Trump. I hate it more than when I was being robbed in a COVID facility, or having my underwear rummaged through there like it were valuable property. It really did happen, by the way. I hate the flu as it has no business being in anyone's throats. It's a dirty tikope. It doesn't understand consent, and it's happier when people go around unprotected, unmasked. I hate the flu. I hate it so much. When I had it, I thought my life was about to end. But you know, men, we are so dramatic when we are sick. I survive and have just another story to tell. Thank you. Okay, then, my clothes were actually robbed when I was in a COVID facility, unfortunately. I'm actually a dialysis patient, that's why I even had to go to a facility. But what was robbed was an NS t-shirt. I was from the SCDF. So my next poem is actually from when I was there. It's called When They Saw a Ghost, recounting some of the times when I was in bunk. Okay, so when they saw a ghost. The boys in NS shrieked and ran out of the bunk one night. Apparently, one of them had witnessed quite the sight. A little girl woke him up with her red eyes staring into his soul. And it was 3 a.m., the cold weather just added on to their fright. Things were never the same in that bunk again. Perched on a tall tree outside their window, growing right out the cemetery beside them, was that girl in white. Her victim fell into a deep fever, forgetting even his name. The terrified boys started sleeping on the floor, in the middle of the room, far away from the alleyways and the doors, blaring Ayatul Kursi on their phones through the night, though having no fear at all whenever there's light. But by the end of basic training, I knew the ghost wasn't real. Apparently, a boy woke another so he wouldn't go to the toilet on his own, and when that boy screamed, he wet himself, although he's fully grown. He felt embarrassed, so he didn't tell us that he was the little girl in white. And as for the other guy, he had a tendency of falling sick. He was on cough medicines and usually stoned like a brick. He probably hallucinated, and I'll admit it, it was always in his mind. But it doesn't explain the nightly whiffs of frangipani and jasmine enveloping the bunk, or the long strands of hair we'd later find left behind. Thank you. And thank you. Okay, so lastly, because today's event is about mental health, I thought about talking about body image issues. So my last poem is about reframing the internal body shamer. I have no hair, but that doesn't mean I am ugly. The bald eagle is majestic and graceful, and I too will flourish under its wings. My stretch marks leave me looking like a block of cheese, but that is proof of the battles I had to fight, not that I'm ugly. I weigh something like a baby elephant. That does not mean I'm ugly. I'm big, yes, and I can work on it, but only if it's for the healthy me. I'm not ugly, although sometimes when I look in the mirror, I feel like Gloria from Madagascar. But that should mean I'm well sought after and definitely fertile. And Moto and Melman would like me. I'm not ugly, though some people think my skin is too dark. Well, guess what? It falls in the shade range of chocolate and dark, delicious honey when I go out in the sun. My skin color is always tasty. I'm not ugly, although my chest may draw some bad attention because they hide my biggest assets, my heart and my soul. I'm not ugly, even if the world may tell me I am. I'm not ugly because I don't want to tell myself that I am. I may be bald, I may have stretch marks, look like a baby elephant or even Gloria, or be too dark or have boobs that are too big. I may be seen as fat or hideous. But what I started to see in that mirror, when I gave him a chance, was the only person who can ever be me. Me. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Abu. Now let us invite Steph back out on stage to give her poetry, because what better to end with the teacher herself. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just do two poems in the interest of time. One of them is called Dear 12-Year-Old Self. This one I wrote based on, after reading a bunch of diary entries I made in when I was about 12 or 13. Dear 12-year-old self, look, I know you love your hamsters, but please stop letting them out of their cages. This is how they'll all get caught and decapitated by your cat in various disturbing ways that will haunt your dreams for the next 12 years. When this happens, please do not buy any new hamsters. Second, no, your breasts will not get any bigger. Ha ha ha. Third, stop worrying that the few friends you have now think that you are boring, because you're not, and you never will be. Consider changing friends, for there's a chance that you may grow to be cooler than beyond your friends' wildest dreams. There's a chance that your hair may grow to be cooler than beyond your wildest dreams. In the future, it will take on various forms, shapes, and colors, but will never look how you want it to look, except in the off chance that you're not looking. Also, dear 12-year-old self, in the next few years, you shall come to realize that Britney Spears does not hold the meaning of life in her song lyrics. Dear 12-year-old self, no, you'll never actually be good at maths. Give it up now and write poems instead, and then burn them before you turn 20. Just trust me. Finally, dear 12-year-old self, I understand that your main concern in life right now is whether or not you will ever own a dog. Yes, you will, and he will be the smartest, handsomest dog in the world, but he will grow old and die a slow, painful death. But it's okay, because you'll not cry upon hearing about his death, because at that very moment you will be at a party in a country somewhere far, far away. Because yes, dear 12-year-old self, in the future you shall come to lose the dog and the hamsters and the dignity you now try so hard to keep safe. You will mess up, you will fail, and worst of all, you will still fall over and skin your knee long after you turn 25. But it's okay, because by now, you'll have learned to laugh about it. See, dear 12-year-old self, all I really meant to say was that if you thought the last 12 years was strange, all of this is about to get a lot weirder from this moment on. Thank you. So the second one I'll do, the last one, it's called When the World Ends, You Will Be Eating Hokkien Mee. This was written about, I think, it's quite a few years ago when I was just got really annoyed at food bloggers. And because I just thought it was very trivial and there was a lot of worse things we should be worrying about rather than what's the best top 5 hawker stalls to go to. So this is my poem. It's kind of about climate change and Hokkien Mee. When the world ends, you will be eating Hokkien Mee. When the last panda dies from an overdose of Viagra in some zoo that he was sent to as a cub, you will be counting how many pieces of sotong the stallholder gave you. When the oceans start overflowing and start swallowing up small coastal cities, the death toll will not even reach the 6 p.m. news on the hawker center TV. When all the fish have gone extinct and all the chickens have died from some flesh-eating version of the bird flu, it will be okay, because there will always be enough prawns left in the sea, and you don't need chicken to make Hokkien Mee anyway. When the tidal waves start flooding large coastal cities like Sydney, Vancouver, and LA, there will still not be enough lard in your Hokkien Mee. When the earth starts to crack open and swallows up cities like Jakarta and Tokyo, you might be intrigued by the noodles on your plate trembling ever so slightly from the tremors. When buildings in Malaysia start to collapse from the tremors, tell yourself it was because they were all poorly built anyway. When a malaria epidemic hits Southeast Asia, remember to swallow your government-sponsored vaccine after your meal and thank God you live in a functional country. When the threat of nuclear war is imminent but probably won't make much of a difference at this point in history, keep believing that Hokkien Mee noodles grow out of the ground on a farm somewhere in Kranji. When the ocean starts to encroach a little bit on the reclaimed land in Changi, Jurong Island and the CBD, just remember that no one ever promised you that Singapore would be flood-free. When the first child dies in a flooded neighborhood on the ECP, be glad you live on the 20th story. When the first families are lost to a tsunami in Pasir Ris, you will be eating Hokkien Mee. When Resorts World disappears underwater, you will be eating Hokkien Mee. And it will be damn good Hokkien Mee. So good you'll want another plate, but you'll never get another because the stall owner will be dead. And his wife will be dead. And his son, the only other person with a recipe in his head, will not remember it because he left to open a gourmet dessert bar which only serves people who can say the words post-apocalyptic with a straight face. So go on, enjoy that plate of Hokkien mee, for it will be the last plate of Hokkien mee that you will ever taste, that will ever be tasted in this world, and be glad, be very glad that you are. Because when the tidal wave rears up to engulf this island, and you finally look up and see the wall of water about to swallow up all of Old Airport Road Hawker Centre, and there's screaming and gnashing of teeth everywhere, the taste of prawn stock, lard and MSG will be the only thing left to hold on to. Thank you.